She saved her boss from embarrassing trouble. The next day, he discovered an incredible truth. Every morning, Sarah stepped into the law firm with a blend of hope and anxiety. The flicker of ambition she once held tightly in her grasp had slowly dulled under the weight of her role as Mr. Thompson's administrative assistant. He was a man of towering presence and unyielding expectations, and beyond his charming exterior lay an arrogance that eclipsed the hard work of those around him. Yet here she was, day after day, setting aside her aspirations of becoming a lawyer to support him. This morning, however, felt heavier. A mistake had bloomed in the papers, a typo in a crucial brief for a high-profile trial set to unfold in mere days. Sarah knew the repercussions would be severe, especially for Thompson, a well-respected figure in the legal community. She took a deep breath, staring at the ink-stained pages before her. Whispers floated around the office, a sense of urgency creeping into the atmosphere. Yet here she was, torn between loyalty and her own ambitions. Should she cover for him? The choice coursed through her mind like a voltage surge. If she sacrificed her integrity for the sake of his reputation, how could she ever reclaim her dreams? But even considering the alternatives left her feeling queasy. If Thompson's failure took center stage, her own career might remain forever shrouded in darkness. So, she crafted an elaborate cover story, fingers trembling as they danced across the keyboard. With every keystroke, her stomach twisted tighter. The very act of bending the truth began to gnaw at her conscience, a festering wound that threatened to engulf her. Before she could unpack the emotional turmoil, a knock echoed through the doorway. It was Mr. Thompson, blissfully unaware of her internal struggle. As the days unfolded, something shifted between them. He began to acknowledge her efforts, commend her work. Yet, the revelation of her family's legacy loomed on the horizon, a secret he was poised to discover. The next morning, he stumbled upon her grandfather's past, a painful, tangled history connected to the same firm. Her heartbeat quickened. Memories of family struggles collided with the present, a kaleidoscope of emotions swirling violently within her. This wasn't just office politics, it was personal. The realization that her grandfather had been dismissed unjustly echoed in her ears. How could she reconcile that past while attempting to push her own career forward? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Now, standing outside his office, the air felt thick, charged with unspoken words. Should she expose the truth about her family's past to Mr. Thompson? Would risking their newfound connection send everything crashing down? Tension crackled through her, each moment pushing her closer to a breaking point. She wrestled with despair, contemplating the sacrifices laid bare before her. The chance to elevate her family's name or keep silent and let her ambitions fade into the shadows. With a final breath, Sarah stepped forward, intent on having the conversation that could either destroy or redeem everything she held dear. As she turned the knob, the weight of uncertainty loomed larger than ever. Would he accept the truth, or would it lead to her downfall? The stakes had never been higher, and in that moment, she realized she was on the verge of uncovering not just her grandfather's past, but her own future as well. As Sarah opened the door, the office was awash in a sun-soaked glow, illuminating the stack of papers that littered Mr. Thompson's desk. The sight of her meticulous arrangements made her heart race. Each document, each annotation was a testament not just to her competency, but a reflection of the path she had longed to carve for herself within these walls. There he sat, unaware of the storm brewing beneath her composed surface. "Sarah, come in," he said, looking up with a hint of warmth in his gaze, a contrast to the authoritarian aura he usually carried. Despite her burgeoning feelings of betrayal, she stepped inside, her resolve strengthening with each step. She took a seat, her voice almost trembling as she spoke. "Mr. Thompson, there's something I need to discuss with you, something personal." The air hummed with anticipation as the weight of her confession hung dangerously overhead. Thompson leaned back, brows furrowing in curiosity. "What's on your mind? Is it about the brief? I know it's a lot of pressure for everyone right now." The concern in his voice offered momentary reprieve, but it also spurred Sarah into action. This was it, the pivotal moment she had been skirting around for weeks. It's not about the brief. It's about my family, my grandfather. He worked here years ago and was let go under circumstances that were unjust. The confession tumbled out. With every word, she could feel the dichotomy of fear and liberation coiling within her. Would he dismiss her revelations? Would he mock the family's history, or worse, rake it into the open like it was only gossip? But as she continued, her words picked up momentum, her sense of agency solidifying like a rock beneath her heart. My grandfather was a skilled attorney, yet he was wrongfully accused. The firm's competition crushed him, and I've lived my life with the shadows of both that injustice and my aspiration to undo it. Each sentence brought her closer to reclaiming her narrative, not just for her grandfather but for herself. Thompson's expression shifted as he processed her words. The flicker of understanding sparked in his eyes. "I had no idea," he murmured, reflecting on the gravity of what she had revealed. The previous morning's discovery began to swirl in the context of the family's plight, altering the perception of the woman he thought he understood. Sarah seized the moment, her pulse quickening. This was not just an attempt to mend the past, it was a chance to carve her path into the future. "I believe honesty is important in this profession. You've always expected the best from me, and I want to earn my place here, not just as your assistant, but someday as an attorney." His silence bore the weight of contemplation. For the first time, the dynamics shifted. Sarah could sense that Thompson was grappling with the ethical implications of the firm's history, her history, and its role in shaping her professional future. She could almost see him reevaluating her value against the backdrop of her grandfather's legacy. "Sarah, he started, but she interrupted, pushing against her nerves. "I can help with the case. I know the history, the emotional undertone that can resonate with a jury. The injustice deserves to be spoken." For a brief moment, uncertainty clouded Thompson's face, but within it, Sarah glimpsed a flicker of possibility. Was he beginning to see her as more than just an assistant? As they locked eyes, the weight of shared vulnerability bound them, shifting their connection into territory she had never anticipated. Just as a slow smile broke across his face, a loud rapping at the door interrupted them. Sarah's heart sank back to the pit of professional uncertainty. Before they could discuss what lay ahead, reality crashed back into the moment. Had she just made herself too vulnerable, or was she finally stepping into her own power? The notion hung, unresolved and laden with promise. The abrupt sound made her heart race again, but this time not from anxiety. It was the prospect of transformation that ignited her spirit. "Who is it?" Thompson called, the door swinging open to reveal another attorney, oblivious to the intensity of their conversation. As the office settled into awkward small talk, Sarah felt a wave of determination wash over her. She had taken the leap. Now she would have to fight for her place. How would she harness this moment of bravery in a world that still seemed intent on keeping her on the margins? Whatever the answer was, she was determined to find it. And as she glanced back at Mr. Thompson, now fully engaged in conversation, she realized her journey was just beginning, a distressed sailor finally finding her compass amid the storm. But how far could she go with that newfound clarity? The thought lingered, taunting her ambitions, as she felt the trial tomorrow looming ever closer. The next day dawned with an uneasy sky, casting a thin veil of gray over the city that mirrored Sarah's own tumultuous thoughts. She arrived at the office early, hoping to gather her bearings before the day unfolded. The weight of her conversation with Mr. Thompson lingered, amplifying her sense of urgency. Today wasn't just about appearing competent, it was a chance to assert herself, and perhaps reshape her future within these walls. As she prepared her desk, Sarah's mind raced with strategies. She had instinctively understood the significance of context in legal battles, and this upcoming trial was no exception. But could she convince Mr. Thompson to trust her instincts? Doubts flickered across her consciousness like insects drawn to a light. To claim her space in the world of law, she had to outmaneuver those insecurities and show she wasn't just an assistant. She was a valuable team member ready to step beyond traditional roles. When the clock ticked closer to 9, Sarah glanced at the assembled documents and began to sort through her grandfather's case files. The notes he'd left behind were more than mere scraps of paper. They were artifacts of his dream, every scribbled line echoing with frustration and determination. As she leafed through them, a burgeoning resolve settled over her. This was her moment to breathe life into his legacy. The office began to swell with the arrival of colleagues, the familiar buzz of chatter filling the air. Mr. Thompson appeared, surveying the chaos of the morning with a laid-back demeanor that belied the weight resting on his shoulders. His eyes caught hers momentarily, and she felt the tension from yesterday's conversation press back against their connection. "Morning, Sarah," he said, casually flipping through a few documents. "Ready for what's ahead?" "Yes," she replied, clarity cutting through her nerves. "I've been going over the files, and I think I can offer some insights into the defense." He raised an eyebrow, intrigued but cautious. "Details?" Gathering momentum, she leaned in. "If we approach the emotional angle, emphasizing the wrongful history and presenting the case as a battle against injustice, it could resonate with the jury. They'll sympathize more if they understand my grandfather's story." For an instant, uncertainty flickered across Thompson's face, yet his due diligence kicked in. He probed her with questions, pushing her rationale, examining her perspective as if peeling layers off an onion. The more he pressed, the more confident Sarah felt, her thoughts solidifying into a coherent strategy rather than mere aspirations. She realized she was not just clinging to her grandfather's legacy, she was forging her own professional identity. And what about the evidence? He wasn't dismissive, rather, he seemed to be recognizing her potential gleaned from passion rather than mere academic prowess. "I've unearthed connections between past testimonies and the firm's motives. If we frame this historically, as the firm protecting its interests, we can shift the narrative significantly." His nod bore weight. "That's aggressive but insightful. Let's prepare a presentation for the team meeting." Her heart swelled. This was it, the moment she craved. Yet the echo of self-doubt persisted. Could she truly stand her ground among seasoned attorneys? As she absorbed his words, that pesky doubt turned inward, challenging her to confront the fear that had long held her back. If she embraced her grandfather's story as her own, perhaps she could help effect real change, as much for herself as for him. The meeting room soon filled with chatter, and soon enough, she was addressing the table full of practiced lawyers. "Our approach should not merely highlight the facts. We must animate this narrative," she suggested, feeling her confidence surge. The initial skepticism morphed into engaged discussion, and for the first time, Sarah could sense the ripple effect of her thoughts capturing their attention. By the meeting's end, as she stepped out into the hallway, a timely call pulled her back to reality. An unusual request from an old acquaintance of her grandfather had surfaced, a name she recognized but hadn't encountered in years. Hesitation wrapped around her heart like a vine. Could this connection lead to deeper truths about her grandfather's past that had eluded her? Would facing this stranger help amplify her voice in an already contorted legacy? For a heartbeat she recognized the fledgling attorney forming within her, yet the question loomed larger. Would this prospect empower her further, or would it unveil truth she was unprepared to confront? The chance awaited, and with it came the promise of both danger and discovery, tantalizing her resolve. She took a deep breath, propelling herself forward, ready to unearth what awaited her. But what if the revelations would shake the very foundations of her current life? The call ended as abruptly as it began, leaving Sarah standing at the quiet edge of the bustling office hallway, her mind racing. The revelation of her grandfather's acquaintance stirred a potent whirlwind of emotions, anticipation, anxiety, and a flicker of hope. This could be the bridge to a fuller understanding of who he had been and the impact he had made, but it also threatened to open doors she might not be ready to walk through. She glanced around the office, taking in the chatter and activity, the air thick with urgency and the scent of fresh coffee. All around her were the echoes of ambition, the kind she craved to embody. Yet fear clawed at her insides. Would this acquaintance share secrets better left buried? Jonathan Gray, his name reverberated in her thoughts. She had to decide whether facing him would validate her work or dismantle her resolve. A sudden burst of energy surged through her. If she was going to unveil her family's legacy, she couldn't tread lightly. She had to plunge forward. This was a chance to not only explore her grandfather's history, but also to crystallize her own developing identity as a lawyer. She made her way back to her desk, focused now, as if she could channel that same determination into her work. Later that afternoon, Sarah found herself walking into the conference room for another meeting, this one centered around the upcoming trial. The stakes were rising, and every moment felt charged. She had prepared diligently, analyzing the case files and rehearsing her arguments. The room was filled with her colleagues as they scrolled through her proposed narrative. Sarah sensed Mr. Thompson's eyes on her, a mixture of curiosity and expectation dancing across his face. With mounting pressure filling her chest, she introduced her ideas with more vigor this time, employing metaphors that tied her grandfather's struggle to their current case. Her words flowed seamlessly, weaving a narrative that combined the emotional appeal with hard-hitting facts. The metaphor of David versus Goliath rang loudly in the room, and for the first time, she caught sympathetic glances, nods of agreement at her passionate assertions. "Sarah, that's an innovative angle. It's risky but can pay off if we execute it well." Mr. Thompson chimed in, his approval palpable. Her pulse raced, but she couldn't afford to falter now. The session of questions that followed only fueled her adrenaline. Each dispute posed by the senior lawyers was an opportunity for her to sharpen her arguments, to evolve and adapt. Rather than retreating into her previous self-doubt, she embraced each rebuttal as a challenge, deftly reinforcing her positions. "You're evolving in real time," whispered a colleague as they stepped outside afterward. "You're impressive." His compliment struck a chord, amplifying her earlier determination. There was focus forming around her burgeoning identity, a factor that she had long questioned. Was she ready to embrace her legacy publicly? But as the day waned, her thoughts returned to Jonathan Gray. Curiosity gnawed at her. She had to confront the truth behind his connection to her grandfather. Could she afford to remain in ignorance? Or would reaching out to him feed her evolution as both a lawyer and a person? The icy grip of uncertainty returned as she made her decision, setting aside the doubts that had once paralyzed her. That night, Sarah sat at her kitchen table, laptop open, fingers poised over the keyboard. The first words regarding a meeting request to Jonathan felt monumental, each keystroke a merging of her past with her present. When she finally hit send, a wave of relief washed over her. But now, another question lingered like a shadow. Would Jonathan welcome her queries, or was he merely an archive of haunting truths? The next few days would reveal whether she was prepared for whatever came next. Her phone buzzed with a new message. Jonathan had replied. Her heartbeat quickened, anticipation filling the stagnant air of her apartment. The journey ahead promised revelations, but unlike before, she felt empowered, ready to embrace whatever truth awaited her. The moment had arrived for her to step into the unknown, where personal history intertwined with her professional ascent, demanding she take the leap into a deeper narrative than she had ever known. The email pinged through the stillness of her apartment like a spark igniting a dry fuse. Jonathan Gray, the name that had loomed over her thoughts like a shadow, was now a tangible thread leading into the heart of her family's past. As she read his swift response, her heart raced not just from anxiety, but from a surge of newfound agency. "Let's meet, Monday at Bloom's Cafe." The concise message was an invitation shrouded in potential and uncertainty. As the day of the meeting approached, Sarah's mind became a canvas painted with the images of her grandfather's life, the legacy that felt so intertwined with her own emerging identity as a lawyer. Each reflection deepened her anxiety and transformed it into determination. She envisioned Jonathan Gray as an old piece of a puzzle she was desperate to fit together, the images of their conversation swirling through her mind, and with each iteration she imagined herself growing more confident, more assured. On Monday, Sarah chose her outfit meticulously, striking a balance between professionalism and approachability, just enough to match the weight of the occasion without overshadowing her intention. The cafe was bustling when she arrived, an ambiance buzzing with laughter and clinking dishes. She found a quiet corner, an environment rife with distraction, but one that echoed her tenacity. When Jonathan walked in, he carried an aura of familiarity about him that flickered to life as their eyes met. He was a seasoned man, wrinkles tracing lines of experience across his face, yet there remained an undeniable warmth in his smile. Their handshake was firm, and as they settled at their small table, Sarah felt the gravity of the moment. She was not merely meeting a stranger, she was confronting a part of her history. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me," she initiated, careful but striving for confidence. Her voice was steadier than she anticipated, breaking the tension that had built since that initial exchange. "I've been hoping to learn more about my grandfather, about his career and what he meant to you." Jonathan's gaze softened, a flicker of recognition coursing through him. "He was a mentor, Sarah, a man whose passion for justice was unparalleled. He taught me everything I know." His words bore weight, resonating within her, solidifying the connection she was craving. As they talked, something unexpected blossomed within Sarah. With every anecdote he shared, she began to unlock hidden layers of her own capability. The stories were not just about her grandfather. They were reflective mirrors, shining insights into her own journey as she'd navigated challenges in her short career. Jonathan spoke of legal battles fought with fierce conviction, of wounds left in the wake of losses, and that resonated with the turmoil she confronted in her daily work. Your grandfather's courage influenced many, including my own approach to law, he said thoughtfully. He believed in fighting against the odds, never backing down. I see that fire in you too, Sarah. Her pulse quickened at his recognition. Validation washed over her, but soon turned into a new reverberation within, the longing to embody that fire fully, to be more than a shadow of her legacy. This conversation was not merely cathartic. It sharpened her ambition. A surge of responsibility coursed through her. She needed to honor her grandfather, not simply reflect on him. Yet, as they delved deeper into the ties of family and purpose, Sarah began to sense an underlying tension in Jonathan's narrative. There were gaps, moments where his expressions faltered, layers to his stories that begged further questions, untold truths waiting just beneath the surface. Were there difficulties? Secrets my grandfather faced? She pressed carefully, sensing the shift in his demeanor. He hesitated, the air thick with unspoken burdens. His careful choice of words hinted at complexities she was realizing she was unprepared for. The conversation shifted as he detailed challenges that painted her grandfather in a more human, flawed light. With each revelation, Sarah's heart raced. She confronted an unsettling dissonance growing inside her. Could she embrace the flaws of a family legacy without shattering her idealistic vision? Jonathan's expression turned serious, and the weight of his revelations hung between them like an anchor. You might need to prepare yourself, Sarah. The truth about what he faced isn't as noble as what we imagine. Her thoughts churned, trapped in a whirlpool of curiosity and apprehension. Did she truly want to unearth the complexities that would alter her understanding of who she was becoming? As she pondered his words, realization struck. She was already on a path of growth, but the journey towards full understanding was just beginning. The meeting had enlightened her, but it also opened doors to an intricate web of truths that could alter everything she had held dear about her family. The conversation had concluded, but Sarah could already sense another chapter unraveling, one she must now navigate carefully. The painful truths about her grandfather and herself lay before her like a vast, uncharted landscape. What awaited her in this next stage? The moment had come to face the realities of her past, both beautiful and flawed, as she prepared to step further into both her heritage and her own developing identity. The following day dawned with an unusual clarity that balanced on the edge of dread within Sarah's heart. As sunlight filtered through her window, illuminating the chaos of her thoughts, she felt like a character standing on the precipice of her own narrative. The truth of her grandfather's legacy loomed over her, filled with potential revelations that could reshape not just her perception of him, but her identity as an attorney. Would she still be able to reconcile the notion of a flawed hero with the image she had cherished all these years? At work, the bustling environment distracted Sarah temporarily, but it offered no solace from the storm brewing inside her. As she sat at her desk, reviewing case files, her mind drifted back to Jonathan's words. They clung to her as if he had imparted more than just stories. He had instilled a weighty sense of duty to uncover the intricacies of her lineage. The fire he saw in her needed to be rekindled, and she was determined to wield it with precision. Her phone buzzed, jolting her from her reverie. It was a thread of an email from one of her clients, a request that promised to pull her into another legal labyrinth. However, the real challenge lay not in the hours of paperwork ahead, but in how to tackle the framework of her grandfather's complexities that now danced in the periphery of her mind. As she responded to the client, Sarah felt the first hints of resolve hardening within her. Taking on this case meant reaffirming her skill set, but more importantly, it was about embodying the spirit of conviction that Jonathan reflected in their conversation, a spirit her grandfather had once celebrated. In the days that followed, she meticulously built her case, channeling the fire ignited in that cafe. Late nights became the norm, and she pushed herself beyond fatigue, examining every detail, every angle. With every moment spent wrestling with the intricacies of legal argument, she felt herself developing a deeper understanding of not only law, but her own capabilities. One evening, after a particularly grueling session of drafting, a revelation blossomed. She could pursue the hidden truths about her grandfather, not as a mental burden, but as a driving component of her legal journey. The thought invigorated her. It transformed her from a passive heir of a legacy to an active seeker of truth. A spark of rebellion ignited her spirit. Wasn't it precisely that persistence, that need for justice, which had driven her grandfather? The air crackled with urgency when Sarah received a call from Jonathan. "I know it's sooner than we planned, but there's something more you should understand about your grandfather. It's vital." His voice was tinged with an urgency that demanded her attentiveness. Every instinct urged her to pull back, to protect the images of the man she had built in her mind. Yet, that same internal compass, the one expecting truth over comfort, pressed her forward. Fighting against her urge to retreat, she scheduled another meeting. When they met, the atmosphere was charged with unspoken tension. Sarah recalled her earlier feelings. Anxiety nested between hope and uncertainty. This was her moment to confront not only the portrait of her grandfather, but also the implications of being his legacy. Jonathan laid down the pieces of the puzzle with painstaking detail. Each revelation he provided peeled back layers of admiration, revealing an individual shaped not just by honor, but by difficult decisions that often drew fire from adversaries. For every laudable act, there were risks taken, lines crossed, choices that forced her to reevaluate not just her grandfather's life, but her own interpretation of legacy. "Sarah, you must realize the importance of embracing these flaws. They mold us too," he said softly, searching her eyes for comprehension. A mix of fear and fascination surged within her. Her identity was becoming twined, not just with strength, but with understanding. Could she confront the truth without losing herself in the chaos? Could she emerge as an advocate for justice while honoring both the luminous and shadowy aspects of her lineage? Just as a semblance of clarity was beginning to settle, Jonathan leaned closer, his tone dropping an octave. "What I'm about to disclose relates to a crucial part of his past. There's an unsolved case you might want to explore." Her heart raced. What truths lay buried in her grandfather's story, waiting on the cusp of discovery? The chase for answers had morphed into something infinitely more complex, and Sarah's journey was far from over. As she searched Jonathan's eyes for answers, the next chapter of her burgeoning saga began to unfold, each revelation offering both enlightenment and dilemma. The weight of Jonathan's words lingered in the chill of the cafe, shifting the course of Sarah's thoughts into uncharted territory. The insinuation of an unsolved case sent tremors through her resolve. Her grandfather, the celebrated hero, did not just kneel before the pedestal of honor. He stood amidst shadows that needed illumination. As days rolled past, Sarah's dedication to both her current case at work and her grandfather's unexplored past deepened. Each morning began with a structured routine of case analysis, intermingled with genealogical research that drew her nearer to the heart of a mystery lurking just below the surface. She spent hours in the library, the aroma of aged paper mingling with the electricity of potential discoveries. Every time she unearthed a new document, a spark ignited within her. A newfound sense of purpose began to flourish. Her case was demanding. The clients were unyielding, as they often were in high-stakes trials. Yet the challenge paled in comparison to the quest that beckoned her regarding her grandfather's life. The duality of her obligations pressed upon her, and she learned to juggle the two with newfound agility. Where previously she might have retreated from pressure, now she leaned into it, drawing strength from the mission of understanding her legacy. Late-night sessions became moments of unfiltered introspection. As she typed legal arguments laced with her passions, she grew attuned to the echoes of her grandfather's decisions, intricacies intertwining with her professional responsibilities. Yet it was not until she discovered a hidden trove of letters revealing her grandfather's connections to individuals embroiled in controversial cases that her heartbeat quickened with urgency. The correspondence painted a complex picture, rife with ethical quandaries that mirrored her own spiraling thoughts. How could a man so revered engage in such morally ambiguous relationships? Would confronting these truths dismantle the sanctity of the image she had painstakingly crafted? Torn between admiration and betrayal, she felt like a ship caught in a storm, anchored yet adrift. Confronted with the challenge of dissecting these letters, Sarah made a pivotal decision. Instead of viewing her grandfather's flaws through a critical lens, she dissected them meticulously, like legal arguments ready for trial. Each thread woven in his narrative presented a potential reflection of her own life, as though she were piecing together a puzzle of not only his identity, but her own. Perhaps the same rebellion that drove her grandfather's decisions flowed through her veins, a resolution to seek the truth, no matter how tangled. By the time she arrived at the office the following week, her demeanor had shifted subtly. Colleagues noticed the fire in her eyes, a commitment that went beyond rote responsibilities. In meetings, she articulated her thoughts with clarity, integrating lessons drawn from her grandfather's convoluted legacy into her legal strategies. Confidence seeped into her very being, and with each small victory in the courtroom, she recognized the empowering effect of her growing understanding. Then came the moment that would blur the lines between her two worlds. A compelling case involving a corporate scandal unfolded, its implications interrogating the foundations of justice she had come to cherish. The case carried echoes of her grandfather's secrets, as it would test not just her legal acumen, but also her moral compass. Engaging fully with it meant she would have to consider how to balance her revelations about her grandfather's life against the ethical lines of her profession. As the trial date approached, her thoughts drifted back to Jonathan's grave warning. There's a crucial part of his past that you need to explore. Was she prepared for the further revelations that awaited her, or was she risking everything she had built by stepping deeper into the shadows? Tension escalated within her. With each passing day in the courtroom, she felt a quiet urge to unearth more about her grandfather to fuel her defense. As the arguments crystallized in her mind, a pivotal question surfaced. Was the truth something to be embraced, even if it threatened to engulf everything she held dear? After a particularly intense day, Sarah sat at her desk, a cascade of documents before her, as the boundaries of her professional and personal quests began to blur irreversibly. Just as she was about to delve into yet another letter, her phone rang. It was Jonathan again, a call she had been dreading since that fateful meeting. "What I have to tell you will change everything," he said, the tension palpable even before she uttered a response. Sarah took a breath, her heart racing. Was she ready to face the truth? The two worlds she had been navigating were converging, and the consequences of her choices sparkled ominously at the horizon. Sarah's fingers hovered above the phone screen, the weight of Jonathan's voice echoing ominously in her mind. A part of her wanted to dismiss the call, to barricade herself behind the familiar walls of her current responsibilities. But curiosity, coupled with the relentless pursuit of truth that had ignited within her, pulled her toward the edge of this precipice. "Change everything?" she finally replied, her voice steady, though her heart threatened to unseat her composure. "Yes, there are pieces of your grandfather's story that you haven't seen, details that impact your case and may redefine who you thought he was," Jonathan explained, urgency palpable. The implications settled heavily upon her like a winter shroud. For months, Sarah had woven her grandfather's legacy into her understanding of justice and integrity, but now she felt that tapestry unraveling. "Where do I start?" "Meet me at the old courthouse tomorrow. I'll show you something that could shift your perspective completely," he instructed before abruptly hanging up. Setting the phone down, Sarah glanced toward the scattered letters and notes that surrounded her. The unread pages felt heavier, burdened with secrets she had yet to unlock. Was she even prepared for what she might discover? The gray fabric of her grandfather's past mixed with her present circumstances loomed darkly, creating a monstrous shadow over her conviction. That night was restless. Images of her grandfather intermingled with flashes of courtroom battles, intertwining her personal quest with her unwavering commitment to justice. When morning dawned, the air was crisp and clear, a stark contrast to the storm brewing in her heart. After gathering her notes, Sarah arrived at the old courthouse, the edifice looming like a forgotten relic of power. She descended into the dimly lit chambers, memories of robust arguments echoing around her like whispers from the past. Jonathan was already there, poring over an array of documents laid out on a long oak table. "Thanks for coming," he said, not looking up. "You need to see this. It might be difficult, but it could be crucial." With trembling hands, Sarah stepped closer, her breath hitching as Jonathan pushed a yellowed envelope toward her. "These are affidavits and records that were never entered into public court documents. Your grandfather's involvement goes deeper than you know." Sarah inhaled, her resolve both fortified and shaken. She opened the envelope, revealing pages that seemed to breathe with energy. Her heart raced as she scanned the familiar handwriting of her grandfather, interspersed with names and dates that spelled out an entangled web of connections, relationships that danced tantalizingly close to the ethical and legal edges she had built her career on. "Are you ready for this?" Jonathan's voice softened, the gravity of the situation pressing heavily on them both. She nodded but remained fixated on the documents, where her grandfather's signature lay like an anchor, tethering her to a past she had only begun to comprehend. Each word revealed layers of compromise and intrigue, challenging the very foundation of her loyalty to both the man and her profession. As she pieced together each detail, a cascade of emotions exploded within her. Anger, guilt, enlightenment. These were not mere documents. They were echoes of decisions that charted the course of her grandfather's life, reflecting choices that carried consequences echoing into her present. Yet amid the turmoil, clarity began to form. She was no longer just a legacy bearer, but a seeker of truth, imminent revelations ready to shape her understanding of her own moral direction. "What are you thinking?" Jonathan inquired, breaking her reverie. "I need to confront this," she whispered, her voice filled with newfound determination. "It's not just his legacy. It's about who I am becoming." As they delved deeper, the course of her professional life strained against the weight of personal discovery. The shadows of her grandfather's past loomed larger, inviting her to engage with the truth she had sought her entire life. In the days ahead, Sarah knew she'd have to approach her case with a courage she had yet to fully muster, facing the traumas of history as both a lawyer and a granddaughter. Would she stand firm in her values, even if it meant placing her career on the line? Or would unraveling the truth lead to an unexpected redemption for them both? "Let's prepare for what's next," she said with quiet certainty, glancing at her notes. But a swirling doubt lingered. Did she have the strength to face the tidal wave of familial and professional truths? Or would she drown beneath their overwhelming weight? The fluorescent lights flickered above Sarah as she barely registered Jonathan's whispered encouragement. The air felt thick with anticipation and the weight of unspoken mysteries. Her grandfather's legacy seemed to bear down on her, each document shifting her understanding from admiration to doubt. Taking a deep breath, she cleared her throat. "What do you suggest we do first?" she asked, the determination in her voice contrasting sharply with the gnawing uncertainty hidden in her heart. "We need to trace these connections," Jonathan replied, returning to the papers carefully. "It's not just about what your grandfather did. It's about how those actions intersect with your case, and even with the judicial system as a whole." Her mind raced. The prospect of diving deeper into her grandfather's past brought an unsettling thrill. Could uncovering these truths lead not just to her own clarity, but to a deeper understanding of justice itself? "Let's start with these names," she pointed to a cluster in the documents. "Run a background check. We need context." In the following days, each revelation unearthed a deeper conflict within Sarah. She learned how her grandfather had made decisions that, while legally sound, had morally ambiguous undertones. It felt surreal to grapple with the realization that the idol she had built in her mind was now a complex figure painted in shades of gray. As she and Jonathan connected the dots, Sarah's fear of tarnishing her grandfather's name shifted towards a concern regarding her own emerging identity. Could she still uphold the values he once embodied? Or would this new understanding obscure her vision of justice? Each new connection forged felt like a fracture in her previously unshakable beliefs. One evening, as she pored over notes, a particular name jumped out. Thomas Grayson, a judicial figure whose ties to her grandfather led to a controversial ruling decades ago. The implications were striking. If this man was indeed complicit in a judicial wrongdoing, what did that say about the system? "Jonathan, I think we have to confront Grayson," she announced, her voice tinged with urgency. "We can't let this go unchallenged. If he knows something about my grandfather, it could reshape everything." "This could be dangerous, Sarah," he cautioned, leaning back, assessing her with scrupulous intensity. "You're talking about taking on a prominent figure who represents the establishment. It's not just a legal battle, it's personal." "Exactly." Realizing the gravity of what she was proposing, Sarah diligently mapped out her next steps. "This transcends our personal conflicts. It's about integrity in our judicial system. If we can find evidence to hold him accountable, it not only honors my grandfather's legacy, but it also serves justice." In the days that followed, the investigation morphed from a personal quest into a professional crusade. With each passing conversation and interview, Sarah felt the fire in her spirit intensifying. Yet, with every step forward, the stakes escalated. She spent sleepless nights at her desk, driven by her need to uncover truths that had been buried for too long. Then one fateful afternoon, Jonathan received a tip that would change their course dramatically. "Sarah," he said urgently over the phone, "I just spoke to someone close to Grayson. They say there's a sealed file from the time of your grandfather that could implicate him directly in a cover-up." Her heart raced, the wheels of her mind turned rapidly. This could be their moment to unearth the truth she yearned for. But what implications would it have for her career, her grandfather's name, and the people involved? "Let's meet," she commanded, determination solidifying her resolve. "It's time to face the truth that has been kept hidden for too long. We're going to confront whatever lies ahead." As she made her way to meet Jonathan, the shadows of her grandfather loomed large. Would the legacy she was fighting for be worth the potential fallout? Each moment brought her closer to a profound confrontation. not just with Grayson, but with herself. The critical decision loomed. How much was she willing to risk for the sake of justice? And just as she entered the cafe, she spotted Jonathan, his face etched with news that could reshape their entire approach. "Sarah," he said, urgency thick in his voice, "you're not going to believe what I found out." As Sarah settled into her seat across from Jonathan, the weight of the moment pressed down on her shoulders. Each detail of the unfolding narrative had led her here, to the edge of a revelation that could reshape everything she thought she understood about her grandfather and herself. "Jonathan, I'm ready," she said, her voice steady despite the tempest swirling in her thoughts. "What did you find out?" He hesitated, the gravity of the moment palpable. "I have reason to believe that the sealed file contains not just evidence of your grandfather's involvement, but also several inconsistencies in Grayson's rulings. Your grandfather's actions may have saved lives, including potentially those of people wrongfully accused." The implication sent a wave of determination surging through Sarah. She leaned in, driven by a newfound fervor and clarity. "This is it. If we can unravel this, the truth not only redeems my grandfather's name, but also exposes the systemic flaws that allowed for these injustices." Jonathan nodded slowly. "But it won't be easy. Grayson has safeguards in place. He's influential. If he catches wind of our intentions, then we must act quickly," Sarah interrupted, her resolve solidifying like steel. "I won't let fear dictate my path. This isn't just about our professional lives. It's about the very essence of justice. We need to gather the necessary evidence and confront him head-on." Jonathan's eyes searched hers, weighing her conviction. "You know this risks everything, your career, your integrity. It's already on the line. But isn't this precisely what being an attorney means? To fight for justice, even when it feels insurmountable?" A spark of defiance illuminated her gaze. Sharing her grandfather's struggle not only anchored her mission, but also solidified her professional identity. Over the following days, momentum built like an approaching storm. Sarah meticulously pieced together information from various sources, each revelation echoing not only her grandfather's legacy, but also the driving force behind her transformation. She was merging personal history with her ascent into the legal world, fervently committed to bring the truth to light, an unwavering light she had discovered within herself. As the climactic moment neared, Sarah and Jonathan prepared for the confrontation. They had spent late nights combing through their findings, and now they were armed with undeniable evidence. They would corner Grayson and shine a light on the injustices that had festered for too long. The day of reckoning arrived, and Sarah found herself standing inside the imposing office of Thomas Grayson, the air thick with tension. He sat behind an elegantly adorned desk, confidence radiating from his frame. The walls around them were adorned with accolades, paintings that whispered of power and pride. But Sarah felt a rush of electricity flow through her. She had stepped into this room not just as a granddaughter seeking truth, but as a burgeoning attorney on a mission to challenge corruption. "Mr. Grayson," she initiated, her voice unwavering, "thank you for meeting us." She exchanged glances with Jonathan, who stood resolutely by her side. "Cut to the chase," he replied, dismissing her greeting as if it were inconsequential. "We're here to discuss the sealed file regarding your involvement with my grandfather's cases. There's evidence that reveals misconduct not just on his part, but the implications of a systematic bias." Her heart thundered in her chest as she watched Grayson's facade shift, the confidence slipping slightly from his grip. "Is that so?" he replied, a thin veneer of mockery painted across his face. "You and your grandfather are living in the past. What does it matter now?" Jonathan stepped forward, a strong ally behind her. "It matters, Grayson, because truth and justice don't have an expiration date. The actions of the past lay the foundation for future integrity." Their exchange danced unpredictably, and with each volley of words, Sarah felt the pieces of her identity clicking into place. She was not merely defending a family legacy, she was carving a new path forged on authenticity and determination. As the confrontation escalated, Grayson's bravado cracked. "You think you're uncovering truths? You're digging your own grave," he spat, the words laced with venom. But Sarah's resolve steadied within her. "No, you're wrong. I'm digging for justice. This will illuminate the venom in our judicial system. I'm seeking the truth, not just for my grandfather, but for all those affected by your manipulations." With each passing moment, she could feel her confidence consolidating like a fortress, a tangible product of her transformation over recent months. The apprehensions that had once tethered her to uncertainty were dissolving. Grayson's haughty smile faded as he realized the gravity of their findings. "You have no idea what you're getting into," he hissed, but the panic flickering in his eyes was unmistakable. "Maybe not," Sarah rejoined, "but this is bigger than either of us. Injustice thrives in silence. This is my voice, and I will be heard." Amid this pivotal exchange, what had once felt murky began to clarify. She was not just confronting a corrupt figure, but the remnants of a legacy she was defining for herself. The past had informed her, but now, empowered by that knowledge and driven by her aspirations, she was ready to claim her future. When they left the office, Sarah was engulfed in a blend of exhilaration and relief. They had not only exposed Grayson's truths, they had pulled back layers of their own realities. She had stepped forth from being a passive assistant to a fearless advocate, melding what it meant to carry her grandfather's name into something powerful. As she exited the building, sunlight bathed her face, illuminating the path ahead. Where once she felt adrift in uncertainty, she stepped onto solid ground. Her ambition was no longer a flicker, but a blazing flame. With a heart clear of doubt, Sarah was ready to mold her experience into a beacon of hope, not just for herself, but for all those seeking justice. The fight was far from over, and she was ready to embrace it. Only then did the realization settle. She was no longer just her grandfather's legacy. She was forging her own. She took a breath, feeling the exhilarating rush of possibility bloom within her. This was the moment she had been waiting for. The culmination of her journey into a confident, capable attorney dedicated to justice. And before the day ended, she resolved not just to unlock the sealed secrets of the past, but also to inspire others with the tale of triumph she was now writing for herself. The path was complete. The journey just started. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support and help us spread more journeys of personal overcoming. Don't wait even one more second to share.